Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. It started the night my uncle passed. His name was Benjamin Yazzie, Benji to those who loved him. A hard man, sharp-tongued but fair, and the kind of elder who never smiled unless you earned it. He died the way he lived, suddenly, stubbornly, with no warning and no apologies. We buried him under the cedar tree near the edge of our family land, the way he'd asked. My aunties wept quietly. My grandmother burned cedar and sweetgrass, and my father stood beside me like stone. That night, the air hung heavy like wet wool, thick with sorrow. In Navajo tradition, when someone passes, you don't speak their name. You don't whistle at night. You don't look into mirrors too long. Death isn't an ending. It's a thin door. One you'd be stupid to leave open. I was 22, and stupid. Grief does something to your head. It makes silence unbearable. That's why I left the Hogan. I told my cousin I needed air. In truth, I just needed to move, to feel something other than the pressure behind my eyes. So I walked, out past the mesquite and up the ridge near the sheep corral. The moon was a low yellow coin, sick-looking. The stars felt too bright. The kind of night where shadows don't behave. And the quiet, it wasn't peace. It was too deep, like everything had stopped listening. I stood there a while, hands in my pockets, breathing in the desert like it might wash the ache from my ribs. Then I heard it. Nez. My name. Low. Drawn out. A whisper that cracked halfway through like a dry branch. It was my uncle's voice, or maybe the memory of it. But it came from behind me. I spun around fast enough to stumble. Nothing, just a brush, and the worn fence posts leaning like old men in the dark. Then I saw them, the eyes, glowing orange, low to the ground, but too far apart for a coyote. They blinked, then rose up impossibly tall, and I saw its shape. Thin, bony, joints bending wrong, like a man someone had poured into the mold of a wolf and left to rot in the sun. It stood just beyond the fence line, watching. My throat clenched. My legs refused to move for 1 second too long. And then I ran like my soul knew something my brain hadn't caught up with. Behind me, I heard it move, faster than anything had the right to move. Its limbs scraped the dry earth like claws on tin. It laughed, a choked, broken sound like someone trying to mimic a human but not getting the rhythm right. Halfway back, I dared to glance behind. It was crawling now, on all fours, but not like a beast, like a person pretending to be one. The Hogan was barely visible in the dark, the doorway lit by the flicker of the cooking fire inside. I sprinted toward it. My lungs burned. My heart pounded like war drums. But I didn't stop, not even when it barked, not even when it screamed, not even when it said, again, in my uncle's voice, Nez. I slammed the wooden door shut behind me. My cousin stood up, wide-eyed. I didn't speak, just grabbed the salt from the cupboard, poured thick lines across the threshold, the windows, every seam. I burned sage, then cedar. My grandfather's old hunting rifle rested across my lap as I sat through the night, too wired to blink. I didn't sleep, not even when the knocking started at 3:13 a.m. 3 soft raps, like knuckles brushing gently. I didn't answer. I didn't look. In the morning, the sun came slow, heavy, like it had to push through something thick just to rise. I went back to the fence line. The dirt was torn up, dry grass pulled like a scab, claw marks, deep as knives, curved in strange patterns around the corral. There were hoof prints too, big ones, like a deer's, but wrong, too wide at the base. They led up to the fence, and then just past it, bare human feet. The tracks ended there, like whatever was stood, watched, and then vanished. My auntie said I was lucky, that it hadn't crossed the salt, that I hadn't answered, that I hadn't spoken his name. I never told her that I almost did, that I almost called out when I heard it, his voice, so much like him it hurt. But I remembered what he used to say. Don't ever talk to shadows, Ness. They lie better than people do. Now I keep cedar in every corner of the Hogan, salt in every window sill. I don't go outside after dark. I don't speak his name. And I never look too long into the dark past the fence line, because those eyes are still out there, waiting. Story 2. In 2014, I drove up to northern Minnesota with a backpack, a tent, and a broken heart. My girlfriend had cheated on me with someone I thought was a friend. After 3 years together, she ended it with a text. No conversation, no closure. I've been spiraling ever since. Friends said I needed to get away. So I did. I found a map of backwoods trails near a place called Whispering Pines. It wasn't an actual town, more like a cluster of cabins and an old gas station with a grocery aisle and a rusted-out microwave for public use. The locals were quiet but not unfriendly. One man behind the counter, gray beard, eyes like river stones, warned me not to camp beyond the frozen lake. Said people heard screams out there. I chuckled. Probably a moose in heat, I said. He didn't laugh. 3 days in, I reached the lake. It wasn't on my map, which made it perfect. I wanted isolation. Real, bone-deep silence. The kind of silence you can't find in a city. The kind that presses against your skull like cotton. I pitched my tent on a flat patch between 2 towering pine trees. The lake was frozen solid, its surface like glass, untouched and eerie. I hadn't seen another human in almost 2 days. I boiled some soup, read a few pages of an old paperback, and fell asleep to the sound of wind hissing through the branches. At 2:16 a.m., I woke up to a crunch. Not the wind, not a branch breaking. Footsteps. Something moving just outside the tent. I stayed still, my heart jackhammered against my ribs. The fire had gone out. Everything was pitch black except for the faint blue light of the moon bleeding through the tent fabric. Another crunch, then a low wet moan. It didn't sound like an animal. It sounded like something pretending to be one, like someone had forgotten how to form words and was trying to groan through a throat full of blood and mucus. I held my breath. Silence. Then the moan again, closer. I unzipped the tent just an inch, slow and quiet, and peeked out. Nothing. No shapes. No eyes. Just snow and pine shadows. I stayed awake the rest of the night, clenching the camping knife I kept next to my mat. Morning came in a gray drizzle of light. I told myself it was a deer, maybe a sick one. I made coffee and tried to shake it off. The next night, I couldn't sleep. I kept the lantern on low. The fire was fed constantly. My knife stayed in my hand. At 3:04 a.m., I saw it. It didn't creep or stalk. It appeared. One moment the trees were empty. The next, it was just there, a tall, skeletal figure, gray skin stretched over brittle bones, long arms that hung almost to the ground. Its chest rose and fell like bellows, too fast, too desperate. Its head tilted to one side, twitching slightly as if it was listening. Its eyes, if you could call them that, were just two pits of nothing, black holes where sight should have been. But I swear it saw me. And then it opened its mouth. The jaw cracked downward, unhinged, impossibly wide. Strings of something, flesh, saliva, stretched between the top and bottom. And then it made a sound I can't forget. Not a scream, not a growl, just one word. Hungry. It didn't shout it. It whispered it, like a secret. I didn't move, didn't breathe. It watched me. Then, as if it lost interest, it stepped backward into the trees. Gone. I packed up before sunrise. My hands were shaking, my fingers numb. I nearly left half my gear behind. The snow around the tent was covered in tracks, bare footprints, human-like but too long, the toes oddly spaced. They circled my tent, not once, 13 times. I counted. I hiked 9 hours without stopping, twisted my ankle halfway but didn't care. Every time I paused to catch my breath, I felt it watching. Every time I looked over my shoulder, I saw nothing, but knew it was there, just out of view. When I got back to the cabin cluster, I didn't speak. I just got in my car and drove. I didn't stop until I hit Duluth. I booked a motel, locked every window, and cried until I passed out. That was 11 years ago. I never went camping again. Never even stepped into the woods after dark. I moved south, started over, met someone new. Life moved on, but the dreams didn't. I still see it, in my sleep, standing outside my window, watching, whispering, always the same word, hungry. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, when I wake up, I see bare footprints in the snow beneath my bedroom window, even when it hasn't snowed. Story 3. I moved into that rental house just outside Gallup because it was cheap, dirt cheap. 2 bedrooms, a bathroom that didn't leak, and a kitchen with a half-functioning stove that clicked like a heartbeat when it was warming up. For a college student drowning in loan debt and bad decisions, it was a steal. I didn't care that it sat alone down a dirt road, surrounded by red dust and silence. The landlady was an older Navajo woman with eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. When she handed me the key, she held on a little too long and said, "If you hear knocking on the windows after dark, don't open anything. Don't look, and don't answer if it's someone you know." I must have made a face because she added, "I'm not joking. People out here know things that you don't." I nodded like I understood. I didn't. I figured it was just one of those regional superstitions, like the ones you hear about not whistling at night or leaving bread out for spirits. Honestly, I thought she might be trying to scare me a little. A landlord's way of hazing the new tenant. Whatever. The first few days were quiet, peaceful even. The walls were thin, the heater clicked when it kicked on, and at night the coyotes yipped out in the hills, their cries echoing like broken laughter. But that was fine. I kept to myself, went to class, and caught up on sleep. It was the 5th night when I first heard the knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the bedroom window. I froze. The sound wasn't loud, but it was heavy, like a hand made of stone was tapping the glass. I glanced at my phone. 2:13 a.m. I waited. Listened. Nothing. No footsteps in the dirt. No rustling. Just those three knocks, and then silence. I told myself it was an animal. Maybe a branch. I had seen a crow pecking at the screen that morning. I rolled over and forced myself back to sleep. The next night, I stayed up, kept the lights off, and waited by the window like a kid on Christmas Eve. 2:13 a.m. Three knocks. This time, I stood up, walked slowly to the window, and peeked through the side of the curtain. Nothing. The desert outside was still, not even wind. The third night was different. I had headphones in, listening to a podcast. I almost missed the knocks, but something about the rhythm of them, three knocks, perfectly spaced, like they were keeping time, cut through the noise. I pulled out my earbuds, and that's when I heard the voice. "Let me in, baby. It's me. It's your mom." The voice came from outside the window. Soft, familiar, comforting, except it wasn't possible. My mother lived in Flagstaff, almost 300 miles away. She'd never just show up in the middle of the night, not without calling, not without warning. My mouth went dry. I didn't move, didn't speak. "Open the door," she whispered again. "Closer now. I need help." And there was something off about her voice, like someone trying to copy it. A delay between the words, a wetness, and behind it, a low, constant sound, like growling through a throat full of mud. I grabbed my phone and started recording. My hands were shaking, but I pointed the mic toward the window and hit record. I backed into the farthest corner of the room and sat there, knees pulled to my chest, until the sun came up. When I played the audio the next day, the voice was still there, my mom's voice. But underneath it, under the pleading and the knocking, was this gurgling. Not static, not wind, a sound like someone chewing through bone. And then, at the very end, right before the recording cut out, laughter. Not human laughter. It was too high, too dry. It didn't stop at a natural place. It just kept going like it didn't know how to stop pretending. I showed the recording to the landlady. She listened. Her face turned pale as ash. She crossed herself and whispered something in Navajo under her breath. Then she looked me in the eye and said, "That's a skinwalker. You're marked now. You should leave. Now." She came by that evening with her niece and some herbs, white sage, cedar, sweetgrass. They smudged the house, said prayers, taped black string in excess over the windows, and sprinkled ash at the doorways. The niece never spoke a word. She just kept watching the corners of the room like something might crawl out at any second. I asked the landlady if this had happened to anyone else. She just shook her head. They always pick one. After that night, the knocking stopped. For a while. I tried to convince myself it was all some elaborate prank or stress hallucination. I tried to forget the sound of my not mother's voice. Tried to ignore the recording still sitting in my phone's memory. I even stopped checking the clock when I woke up at night. But one morning, about 3 weeks later, I woke up to something worse. On the inside wall of my bedroom, the wall that faced the hallway, not the outside, were handprints. Dark, greasy handprints. Not in blood, but in something that smelled like rotten copper. Some were small, child-sized. Others weren't. Fingers that stretched too long. Palms with deep cracks like bark. I ran my hand across the wall. It was dry. No paint damage. No sign anyone had broken in. Just prints. Dozens of them. Pressed into the drywall like something was trying to crawl out. I moved out that afternoon. Left half my stuff behind. Told the landlady I didn't want my deposit back. She didn't ask why. Now, months later, I still get chills when I see 2:13 a.m. on a clock. I still dream about that voice. And sometimes, just as I'm drifting off, I hear knocking 3 times, slow and patient, on the walls of my new apartment. There's no window there, just drywall.